Happy days, everybody. Happy reading. Hope you are doing well. I am Tanisha, and I'm here to do Talking Books with Tanisha. Really excited to have you come back today. Um, we are looking at Finding Me. Before we do that, though, I want to encourage everyone to hydrate. Have you been drinking your water? Have you been taking care of yourself? We talk about self-care, but we don't always really talk about like what it means to take time to do self-care. As soon as I finish doing this today, I'm going to go out for a walk around the block. It's sunny. It is a nice temperature, and it's important for me to be able to move around. So I'm going to do that for myself. But self-care can be lots of things. Actually, other ways I do self-care is like reading. I sometimes will, text a person I haven't really talked to in a while, or I'll scroll through YouTube and like look at old music videos that I really enjoyed when I was younger. Self care can be whatever you want it to be. So defining for yourself what it means to take a little bit of time just to kind of acknowledge that you are important and that who you are is only as functional as the time you allow yourself to be rejuvenated and refreshed is also really important. All right, having said that, we're going to go into the book for today, Finding Me. You can see right here behind me. And this background actually is coming from the Oprah Winfrey Book Club. So this is from her site, but I like it because it has a quote from the book, which starts off with like, "We were Poe." Viola Davis talks about how they were not poor, they were not disadvantaged, they were poor, like as in there was no hot water. Sometimes there was no water at all. They didn't have a working toilet many of the times. Heat was a luxury, food was a luxury. They lived in spaces that were very, for most people, a lot of people, they would find it to be, uninhabitable. But that's what they had, and that's what she grew up with. And this is a book that you may also have seen. Oprah and Viola have a special. I think I want to say it's on Netflix. That has her talking about this book. So after this, if you want to go read that, go watch that show or that interview. I found it to be even more interesting after having read her book, just to kind of hear from her own words and her own voice, kind of what she went through. And if you've like enjoyed other interviews with Oprah in the past, you know that Oprah has a really great way of like interviewing people and kind of bringing out those inner stories. So Viola Davis goes into those stories. I happen to be a Viola Davis fan. I have seen most of the movies that she has been in. I've liked the characters that she has portrayed. I was always really curious about who she was because for me anyway, it felt like I would see her sometimes like in advertisements around like No Child Hungry. Or talking about what it meant for like food insecurity and not quite understanding what her connection was to that. After reading this book, I really understand her connection to that. And not only that, I think I have a different regard around like her story and kind of where she is now and what it takes for her to be there. So Finding Me is a book that we're talking about today. This book is her story written in her own words. She is talking about like her growing up in Rhode Island and what it meant for her to live in a family that had physical abuse, addiction. Her father was an alcoholic. Her father also was physically abusive towards her mother. So she grew up watching that for most of her life. Later on in her life and her father's life, some things significantly changed, and that wasn't the story that they ended up with. She was a person that just didn't have a lot of means. Like her family did the best that they could. She had other siblings, so there was I think 6 of them that grew up together, 5 or 6 of them, and she was a person that really wanted to take care of her family, but also like needed someone to take care of her. She talks about things like going through the garbage and looking for food. She talks about how the rats were so like populated in her apartment where she lived that at night when the lights went out she could like hear them like gnawing on her dolls' faces, and then waking up in the morning and not seeing like the face was completely gone from her dolls. She talks about wanting to cover her head because like the rats would jump onto the bed, and she could feel them at night, or not wanting to get up at night and go to the bathroom because not knowing what she would run into, or just the situation in which she was living was so awful. She also talks about because of that, like she was a bedwetter until the age of 14. So there are many nights where like her and her sisters She also has a brother, but her sisters primarily would like, wet the bed. And then they would stay in that because it was better than getting up and like, confronting whatever like rodents or animals or insects or whatever that might be in the apartment. But then because they didn't have access to water, or a lot of appliances that worked, like, rinsing out or, kind of cleaning those clothes out and hoping they would be dry by the, the morning. So hanging them like on clothesline, but there isn't any heat. So not everything got, completely dry. So they would be going to school sometimes in damp clothing that smells like pee, and they also would smell like that. And like what it meant to be, kind of picked on. She is a fighter. She is a person who, like with her words and also like sometimes with her fist, had to grow up in a space where she was looking, standing up for herself because there were so many things about her that she couldn't control. And so people, would pick on her, make fun of her color, make fun of her race, make fun of her situation, her clothing, how she smelled, her hair. Like there's a list of things. And this story is about finding herself, like in the middle of all the things that told her that she wasn't enough, that she would never be enough. And hearing these messages from people that lived in her neighborhood, people that lived in, that went to her school, sometimes people in her own family. How is she going to figure out how to get through that? How is she going to figure out how to, make her way through that? She had a sister, I think her sister's name was Diane, who told her, like, this is not going to be your future. Like, find a different future. Like, you don't want to be stuck here. And when she was younger, she joined a drama program and she started acting and found like kind of a possibility of what if that could be her reality. And so she started acting and everything. She went to camps, like she did summer programs. She joined different programs at school. And she worked her way to lots of different opportunities to continue acting. And so she was able to get her way into Juilliard. Like she got a spot in Juilliard, a highly esteemed school. And she was like classically trained in all the different ways of what it meant to be like an actor. And she talks about appreciating that experience, but also really wanting, what does it mean to be a working actor? Well, some people really want that for their lives. Like they want that fame and that fortune. And she kind of breaks down the reality of that for us too. Like, what does it really mean to be a working actor and to be a famous actor? Like those are two different things. So it was really kind of nice to see that part of her story. I'll say the other thing that she kind of goes into is the different roles that she takes on. And a lot of people know her from Doubt. It's kind of like her first Oscar nomination, for how she showed up in that very small like piece of the movie and made a really huge like impact in that. And then all the other things that she's been in since that time and before that time too. So just hearing her talk about like her own acting journey, and what it is that she appreciated and what it was hard for her. And then of course that pressure around when you make it, like what do you owe your family? Like the people who like you kind of left behind, or people who are kind of watching you move forward, like do you owe them anything and what do you owe them? And then what is family and what are friends? What is, fortune? What is fame? What is success? And then what is self-love? So those are some of the big themes that showed up in this book. I hope that you have a chance to picking up Finding Me by Viola Davis. It's a great story just to kind of talk about. I don't like stories like overcome your challenges or made your way out, because I feel like a lot of people go through a lot of things. There's lots of different things to kind of overcome. But I do like the idea of like, finding yourself and knowing that your situations, everyone's always dealing with something. Never underestimate the power of what people are going through and paying attention to that. And there's some people in this story that paid attention to her circumstances and lent a hand out to kind of help support her. And then in return, like she's also lending her hand out to help support others. So it's a full circle story. I think that you will be empowered, you will be enlightened, you'll be affirmed, and you will be motivated by reading the words of Viola Davis. Wanted to say thank you for being here today and joining me again for another Talking Books with Tanisha. There are other books to come. You have any comments about these books? Any things that you want to share about Finding Me? Have you had a chance to read it? Are there different places that you get your books that you are really excited about? Like drop that into the comments as well. What other uplifting, encouraging things do you want to share with us? What interesting questions might you have about this story or about Viola Davis or about anything? And as always, keep reading. What books next on your to be read list? Look forward to talking to you more about the books that are coming up for me. I'll see you next time. Have a great day.